So this is the month where we focus our teachings on prosperity principles. And y'all know I don't teach that whole prosperity gospel thing. We talk about prosperity because it allows us to live the kind of life where we can give our gifts. When I was becoming, just to frame my whole take on this, when I was becoming a practitioner, you have to do what they call a mock panel, or at least where I did my training, you did one. And it was before you did your licensing panel. And one of the ministers on the panel said, because you go through 4 years of training to become a practitioner, and one of the things you trying to get to is that, that people, that our teaching is about freedom. And so when people come to you and they want prayer for something, you have to find a place in yourself to line up with that. And so this minister on the panel said, well, let me ask you a question, Chris. Is there anything that you would have trouble praying with someone over? And I thought about it for a few minutes. And, basically she was saying, do you have judgment about anything? And I can and have prayed with a lot of people who are making choices that I don't agree with. But the one thing I said that I finally landed on was yes. If somebody drives up in a Ferrari and wants me to pray for a Rolls Royce, I'm out. And so I had to work through that. I could actually do that now, but that's not where I teach from. I don't teach opulence. I teach enough and more than enough. Because I think what we're all looking for is a quality of experience that it requires money to have. Does that make sense? So the framework for this month, the month where we focus on prosperity teachings, is our the affirmation, the abundance affirmation that we say every single week. And we say it as a matter of rote. But I thought I would actually unpack it this month. And so last week, the talk title was, I am in the flow of divine good. And this week, the talk title is the second line of our abundance affirmation, which is all that I am and all that I give. All that I am and all that I give. So the first thing I should probably talk about is what all am I? Right? What all am I? And to make this easy, I have created some sort of elementary school PowerPoint slides. Not my forte, clearly. All right. So there's, for the purposes of what I'm talking about today, we're going to talk about three levels of I am. So there's the I am, capital I, capital A-M. There's the I am, small case, and then there's I give. So, of course, most of us are familiar with the phrase, I am that I am. And in Judeo-Christian teachings, that comes out of the book of Exodus. And it is, of course, when, is it Moses? Moses, thank you. When Moses says, who are you? And the presence answers, I am that I am. Or I will be what I will be. So what we call that, the actual essence of spirit that is also the essence of each and every one of us, it's not a being, it's the ground of being. It is timeless. It is irreducible. And it is I'd say without sin, but I'm afraid to sort of use that. It is perfect, whole, and complete. How's that? Okay. So let's say that we all come in with into this life experience as the pure I am, capital I. But then we have a life, right? So we come from different circumstances and things happened, and those things condition us. So I'm going to call all of the conditioning, which is also in this form, the small I am. And it's really important to hear that the best way I know how to put it is it's the conditioned self. It's conditioned by our parents, by our life experiences, by conclusions that we came to based on experiences that we had. Sometimes we came up with erroneous conclusions ourselves, and sometimes we were actually programmed. So where these two I's, the I and the I, or the I and the I, specifically applied to prosperity. The I am that I am, knows only abundance. I mean, if you're an infinite being, an infinite presence, where can you have a shortage? Nowhere. And we see, I think, in nature, reflections of this more than enoughness, this I am that. Grains of sand, leaves on trees, fingerprints. That's the essence. But then the little I, the conditioned I, might have learned that money doesn't grow on trees, that money's the root of all evil, or love of money is the root of all evil. If I have more than enough, someone else will have less than enough. See, like limitation. We might have heard, blessed are the poor, and stopped right there. And those are just kind of the cultural ones. Everybody has their own unique twist on this. I had one of the beliefs that I discovered that I was carrying around for a long time was, money equals love, and I don't deserve love. Like, I had a dad that was a provider. And so the way he showed love was money. And so somehow I created a belief around the only way that he knew how to love. You see what I'm saying? So we have these things that cover up this original truth that is our divine essence, that is the I am. And now it's not really germane at this moment, but I'm going to get to that outer circle, which is, for our purposes, I give. Remember, all that I am and all that I give. So that outer layer, we're going to call that the I give, and I'm going to come back to it in just a minute. I want to read you a quote from Ernest Holmes. I will tell you, if you want to study prosperity teachings in the Science of Mind textbook itself, the best chapter, in my opinion, is the chapter called Principles of Successful Living. This is a quote from that chapter. Lessons on prosperity are sometimes dangerous because of the misunderstanding of this subject. Science of Mind is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Neither does it promise something for nothing. It does, however, promise that the one who will comply with its teachings, that he shall be able to bring greater possibilities and happier conditions into his experience. Science of mind is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Neither does it promise something for nothing. It does, however, promise the one who will comply with its teachings that he shall be able to bring greater possibilities and happier conditions into his experience. One of the things that happens when people come into what I would call, what we teach, our particular brand of it is science of mind and spirit, but there's mental science, there's divine science, there's unity, there's anything that is based on the notion that a new thought creates a new experience. And one of the things that happens when people come in, and we saw like an explosion of this when the movie The Secret came out. People were like, oh, this is great, I'm just going to think something new. And then, boom, cha-ching, I can have it all. And so they would affirm these things and visualize these things, piles of money and Mercedes-Benzes and stuff. And they'd really diligently do that. But it didn't work. For most people, it doesn't work. Because, see, to think that you can do something for a little while and have it change everything, there's a name for that. It's called magical thinking. If I just go like this, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, and I believe it and I feel it, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to open my eyes and there's going to be a pile of money. But that's not the way it works. See, because what happens is when we begin to practice, we are usually practicing from the little I am. And we don't know it. We think we're practicing from the big I am. Now, the way that Ernest Holmes talked about this is you have conscious mind and you have subconscious mind. And see, we come along with our conscious mind and we set our intentions and do our visualizations and get some prayer and do all these things. And we think that's where we're creating from. When the reality is, where we create from is not there. It is from the sum total of the beliefs that we have. And many of those beliefs, when we start out on this journey, are below our level of awareness. Ernest Holmes goes on to say, we do not take what we wish, but we do attract to ourselves that which is like our thought. Man must become more if he wishes to draw a greater good into his life. We need not labor under the delusion that all we have to do is to say that everything is ours. This is true in reality, in the center. But in fact, it is only as true as we make it. So the big question becomes, how do I start creating from my original identity and not from the part of me that's conditioned for lack? How do I start creating from my original identity? Well, I mean, the obvious answer is that you do that the same way that you get to Carnegie Hall, right? Practice. You practice. But I'm going to make a couple of more suggestions, and then I'm going to go on to the give part. The beautiful prayer and silence this morning was done by Alexis, who's one of our licensed practitioners. We have a prayer team, and we have 2 licensed practitioners, Alexis and Catherine Cates, who is not here today. What differentiates Catherine and Alexis is that they're licensed prayer practitioners, which means they can actually do spiritual counseling with you. And they can do spiritual counseling, and as part of the honoring of their time, they charge a fee for that. one of the biggest things I ever did for my own prosperity work was to work with a licensed practitioner. Because my own unconscious beliefs are by definition what? Unconscious, right? I can't see my own blind spots. I can't see what's running in the background that's actually creating my experience. But Alexis can, because she's been trained to. And she can help me come to that realization. Catherine Cates can as well. You see what I'm saying? It is worth the investment to actually go to someone who specializes in this. The other thing that I'd highly recommend that you do is get prayer from anyone. Get prayer. We have, today we have 1, 2, Candace and Alexis, and Celia can pray. We usually have 5 or 6 people here. And they can all pray with you for your prosperity, and they're good at it. The other route, I think, that is really effective for helping us to move back to that original I am and to create from there is a daily spiritual practice. Man, I wish I was saying something novel, but I'm telling you something that you already know. And so let me put it this way. When you take time to go into the silence, especially if you have a regular prayer practice, when you take time to go into the silence before your prayer practice or at any other time, you will feel yourself in that presence with a little bit of practice. You will feel it. And then if you speak your word from that already established awareness, it's like pouring fertilizer on your affirmations, on your prayer time. Now, I think I may have used this example last week because, well, I don't know. If I did, it's all right. I want to give you an example of what practicing, being in that place of center, in the I am, can actually do. So I told the community last week that Michael and I's time together has come to a close, and we are splitting up. And I ask for your patience and your prayers. But one of the things that happened when I started thinking, okay, what's next? How am I going to manage what's going to happen with all this? One of the things I realized is that I can't afford the house that we live in by myself. I can't afford it. It's just more than I can pay. So I went to coffee with a friend of mine, longtime friend, and he said, "What are you going to do with the house?" And I said, "Well, I don't think either one of us is in a financial position to keep it." And he said, "What do you want to do with the house?" I said, "Well, I'd like to, I'd like to keep it. Maybe, I love the big room and the freedom of being able to have people over and all that kind of stuff." And he said, "I'd be willing to invest." And what he was really saying is, I'd be willing to buy down the mortgage and gift it to you. And when you sell the house later, give me my money back. Okay. In the fear and the feelings that I was feeling, I had slipped back out to the conditioned self, which is, I've got to figure this out. Let me figure all this out. And then I can decide what's possible and what's not possible. Because I forgot for a little minute that principle or God is not bound by what came before. God is not bound by what I think at this exact moment. And I have spent enough spiritual and mental coin feeding my true identity that it is now what's automatic in my subconscious. And even though my conscious mind slipped into lack, my life was still reflecting back to me the work that I've done over the last 12 years to know what's possible. So I want to say one more thing about the kind of work that we're doing. And it's an old example, but it's a beautiful one. You know, the story about somebody asked Michelangelo, how did you create David? Well, I just chipped away everything that wasn't David. We are all David. We are all the masterpiece. And we forget. Yeah, sometimes we're programmed to forget. And sometimes really crappy stuff happened and helped us to forget. And so really the spending of our mental and spiritual coin has nothing to do with what we need to add to ourselves. We're already a masterpiece. We spend our time and energy taking away what was false. We spend our time and energy taking away what was not David. And that's what Ernest Holmes says. We spend our mental and spiritual coin. Okay, so last thing I'm going to say here is about that outer part, the I give. Because remember, we're talking about the self in the context here of that line of our abundance affirmation. All that I am and all that I have. All that I am and all that I give. Okay. So if what we're talking about is changing our experience of abundance by changing our consciousness, one of the questions that comes up is, why should I give it all until I've done enough work to restore my original I am? Let me just do my work in consciousness, and then as soon as I've done all that work, I'll give. Well, here's what I know, and this is just common sense. It seems weird to be thinking about this right now, but 6 or 7 years ago when Michael first realized that she felt called to have a child, I was talking to one of my mentors and I was telling her about it, and I was sort of excited and sort of scared, and I said, I don't think I'm ready. And she said, let me tell you something. If you wait till you're ready to have a child, you wait the rest of your life. If you wait to give until you think you have enough to give, you'll be waiting the rest of your life. Why is that? Because here's what happens. It's the process of giving itself, of stretching yourself just a little bit, whether if it's your time, talent, tithe, whatever it is. That's where you bump up against your conditioned self. All of the ideas about lack and limitation that you're walking around with. When you start giving, that's when all that stuff boils up. And believe me, those are weeds that you want to pluck out, and you can't pluck them out until you can see them. Right? So when you first start giving, I don't care what it is, you're going to be giving from the little I. You're going to be giving from the little I. And you are going to be educating yourself about where your false beliefs are, about where the conditioned self and the beliefs that operate beyond your awareness, well, they won't be beyond your awareness anymore. They won't. They're going to pop up, say, hey. And that's why you do that. You have the practice of giving. And then what happens is with practice and time and prayer and affirmations and the mental and spiritual coin, you are going to pop through, chisel the last piece off, and you'll be doing this from the very center of your being. You'll be giving from the I. All that I am and all that I give. Let's pray.